Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Green Bay Packers 2017 season review analytics. And this video in particular is going to focus in on all of the team statistics that the Packers had this year. And we're going to look at all the areas where they were above average, below average. But more specifically, this is not going to be a video where I just tell you all the reasons why the Packers were terrible this year or why the Packers were bad. This video is going to clue in on the areas where the team was below average and then look for all the areas that they need to be above average. So we're going to look at free agency, the draft, that other sort of thing later, but this video specifically is going to tell you, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what specifically went wrong for the Packers this year and what types of players, positions, etc. do they need to target and get a hold of for next year. So all terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you're new to the channel, if you're new to the content that I provide, all that information will be there for you to do all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, let's get to the data. So this is the Green Bay Packers based on 2017 season data. When you look at the overall data for them, it was not that great on offense or defense. Lots of areas that were really, really bad. When you look at the overall offense, the turnover percentage was average, so they were not that great in terms of preventing turnovers. Sack percentage, very, very below average, 19.21 out of 100, so they allowed way too many sacks this year. Offensive score percentage was below average as well. And defense, the defensive offensive score percentage was 5.67 out of 100. So they gave up a lot of points per drive on defense, way too many points. And also on top of that, the turnover percentage was very below average. So not only did you not prevent points on defense, you also were not very good in terms of creating turnovers, not very good in terms of getting interceptions. And the sack percentage overall was above average, but not really amazing either. So there wasn't one area on offense or defense where you were elite, this year, to say the least. So both offense and defense could use some improvement next year. Then, of course, when you get to special teams data, punt return yardage was fairly decent. Kick return yardage was below average. Defensive punt return yardage was above average. Defensive kick return yardage was just dead on average. Field goal percentage was 32.28 out of 100, which is really not where it needs to be. So place kicker is another area where I think there needs to be some emphasis in the offseason. Extra point percentage also not where it needs to be. Punting average was about average, and then the overall score for this team was 12.76 out of 100. So this was not a very good football team, statistically speaking, overall, based on data. So not the best year. When we get to the overall data, like how does the 2017 Packers team compare to the 2016 team? And you can clearly see right here, they pretty much regressed on offense. They regressed in terms of turnover ratio. They regressed in terms of giving up sacks. Offensive score percentage also regressed pretty well. The defense didn't really regress a ton except for turnovers. So last year they were able to create more turnovers versus this year, but last year's Packers team had a 4.25 in terms of defensive offensive score percentage, and 2017 had a 5.67. So the defense realistically did get worse in terms of creating turnovers, but they were kind of the same in terms of preventing points. So this defense has always not been that great at all. So I think it's kind of weird that it took this long to kind of figure this out, but the only thing that really changed in 2017 is they just weren't creating turnovers at the same rate that they were in 2016. So, but yeah, that area definitely kind of is an issue that regressed. Then of course you look at punt return yardage, that got a little bit better. Kick return yardage also got a little bit better. Defensive punt return yardage, defensive kick return yardage, both those areas got better. Place kicker though, below average, compared to what they were last year and, of course, what they were in 2015. Extra point percentage also wasn't that great last year or this year. And punting average overall did get a little bit better from last year. But overall, 12.76 out of 100, not that great. Based on data since 1998, this is the worst Green Bay Packers team since 1998. So that's how bad this year was, statistically speaking. It pretty much was the worst Packers team over that time span based on overall statistics. So this was, again, not the best year. Not the best year for the Packers. at all, and definitely kind of shows up here. Now, we get to this chart. This chart specifically looks at what the average score is based on all those statistics for 12 to 16 win teams, 9 to 11 win teams, 8 wins or more, or 7 wins or less. So this just gives you a perspective of where teams that win football games typically perform based on these statistics, and where your team performed and where your team should get to. So it gives you sort of a ballpark of like, these are the areas where you need to improve so that you could potentially become a 12 to 16 win team, or a 9 to 11 win team, or an 8 or more winning team, obviously, because at the very least, being 500 is still pretty decent. It'd be fun to be 500. So, and when you look at the overall data, obviously offense and defense needs improvement. They need to not turn the football over as much as they did last year. Sack percentage, another big area that needs to improve, so they have to get better in terms of protecting the quarterback and not allowing as many sacks as they did this year. Offensive score percentage also needs to go up by a really large margin. So they need to get back into the 60, 70 to 80 range if they actually want to be a very prolific offense again. And defensively, of course, big issue, defensively. Like the defensive offensive score percentage is 5.67 out of 100. That is not cutting it. They need to get into the 60s to 70 range in order to be a team that can consistently win, 9 to 11 wins, 12 to 16 wins, etc. Sack percentage is kind of okay. The ability to create sacks is where it needs to be. It's at least in the average area where it needs to be. But turning the football over, getting turnovers, getting interceptions, those are two big areas where they need to focus in on this year especially. So they have to get better in terms of creating turnovers and getting interceptions, because that was a big difference between 2016 and 2017 is that they just regressed in that department. Other special teams points like punt return yardage, they were pretty much where they needed to be. Kick return yardage could use some improvement. Defensive punt return yardage and defensive kick return yardage are pretty much where they need to be. Field goal percentage, though, is not where it needs to be. They definitely need to look for a place kicker and kind of think in that sort of direction this year, whether through free agency or the draft. Extra point percentage does need to improve as well. Punting average is where it needs to be. It's not amazing, but you don't necessarily need to have an amazing punting average in order to win a lot of football games. And of course, the overall statistical score needs to go up, because a 12.76 is really not where you want to be at all when it comes to winning football games. Then the last area we're going to look at is other sort of statistical data. So this is data that I don't normally talk about a lot during the season because I already keep track of so many data points. But this is basically other sort of data points like completion percentage data, first down conversion rate with the run, first down conversion rate with the pass, and other sort of like strength of schedule and other stuff like that. So you could pause the video right now and go to the description to get all the sort of information and data about these particular things. But I just kind of have this here just so that you have some idea about all this kind of stuff. Ultimately, though, again, this team, in terms of where they regressed the most, they regressed in terms of second down completion percentage, third down completion percentage. So those are two big areas where there are just issues, just big issues there. They regressed in terms of the running game, especially when it comes to first down conversion rate with the run on first down. That's a big area where they had a big regression. And of course, the passing game, when you look at first down conversion rate with the pass, second down conversion rate, and third down conversion rate with the pass, all were below average compared to what they were. I mean, 2016, they were below average in terms of first down, but second down was above average, and then third down was in the 90-plus area. So, in many ways, this Packers team, in terms of the passing game, those are the big kind of Achilles heel. The passing game was a big Achilles heel. The running game kind of regressed a bit in many ways. And I think ultimately those are the two things to kind of put some emphasis on. I do understand that Aaron Rodgers got injured, that he had all these injuries on the offensive line, and you had all the, there's so many excuses you can make for why this team didn't perform this year. That's fine. But I'm just telling you that this is how they performed this year, and you don't want to perform like this again. So lots of teams have injuries. Lots of teams have to deal with their own stuff, but they ultimately, play through it and get through it. And in this particular case, again, these are just areas where you need to consider improving. So ultimately, what should you look for in free agency and the draft and those other sort of areas? Big things for me. On offense, I would definitely consider getting more offensive playmakers, period. You need to get more wide receivers. You need to maybe get more running backs. I know you already have a lot of running backs, but again, they're not performing where they need to perform, period. So, you may have a lot of running backs that you might be attached to or really like, but you don't have a Le'Veon Bell. You don't have that type of guy, so it wouldn't hurt to get another running back. It wouldn't hurt to get some more tight ends. It wouldn't hurt to get more wide receivers. Another big thing on offense, which is probably even more important than offensive playmakers, is the offensive line. You do not have the type of depth that you need. And yes, you had a lot of injuries. I understand. Like, there was a ton of injuries this year. But ultimately, that same thing can happen next year. So you have to get more depth. You have to get more players. You have to get healthy bodies that can play tackle, that can play guard, etc. And that was not where it needed to be this year. And ultimately, the sack percentage was reflective of that. On defense, you have to get better on defense. You have to get better in terms of creating turnovers on defense. So you have to get more guys to be able to create turnovers. But more importantly than that, you have to improve your defensive offensive score percentage. Like, this Packers team has had a bad defense for a while now. If you just look at the statistics, just look at them. They have not had the type of defense that they really need. So they have to get better on defense. They have to get they have to get more guys that can create turnovers, maybe investing in linebackers that can, create fumbles or interceptions, get more safeties, cornerbacks, you name it. Defense is something that definitely needs to be thought of and looked at and examined if you want to get better. And then, of course, place kicker. Big issue. The field goal percentage is not where it needs to be, and place kicker is just that one type of position that I know a lot of people don't really think about that much, but it's by far the most important position on special teams in terms of winning football games, statistically speaking. So that area has to be addressed in free agency or the draft if you want to get better. So ultimately, when it comes to this particular team, those are my general thoughts based on the data, based on all the statistics. Again, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.